Nilah has been in a much better spot lately because of the recent changes, and a big part of that is because with the removal of Lethal Temple, the strength of many ADCs have been reduced in the early laning phase, which is Nilah's weakest point in the game. There's one item that I've been testing a lot recently that makes Nilah really good right now in this meta, and that item is Death Stance. Normally ADCs would choose to not buy Death Stance because it is nerfed for ranged champions, but for Nilah, she gets the full benefits as she is melee. In our current meta, usually teams will run multiple AD threats with maybe 1 to 2 AP threats, so when would we build it on Nilah? This is something you usually decide at champ select. If the enemy has a standard comp where they have all types of damage and armor isn't especially high value, build a Bloodthirster second. However, versus teams that run mostly AD threats, you can always buy Death Stance second. You're going to always want Conquer as your keystone, followed by Absorb Life or Triumph, Bloodline or Alacrity, and Cut Down or Last Stand. Absorb Life and Cut Down are for scaling and are usually better with Bloodthirster. Triumph and Last Stand are for fighting and playmaking and are usually better with Death Stance. Bloodline is generally better with Death Stance because it means that we will not be building a Bloodthirster in this build unless the game gets hard. Death Stance should be the only non-crit item we build with this setup, and always go Attack Speed Shard, Adaptive, and Flat or Scaling Health depending on your preference. For secondary runes, take inspiration with Footwear and sit on the Magical Footwear boots for most of the game, and Cosmic Insight, which gives insane value on Summoner spell cooldowns. An alternative to this can be Overgrowth and Conditioning in the Resolve tree to be more tanky. For your first base, try to get 1300 gold for a BF sword, but don't force it. If you have enough for a BF sword, that usually guarantees that your early game will go well because of the immense power spike that it gives, but if you cannot afford it, just buy longswords. Strive for an Essence Reaver first item because it is the crit item that gives Nilah the most value as Collector is too nerfed, and after you buy Essence Reaver, for a standard build you can go Bloodthirster second for a lot of AD in your 2 item spike, as well as essentially infinite mana and health as long as you have something to hit. However, in the case that you build Death Stance second, it will allow you to maneuver skirmishes like a tank. It will take the enemy all their cooldowns to even get you low, and once you have one takedown, you just recover all the health back through lifesteal and Death Stance healing. In essence, you will be a drain tank for your team while providing damage and utility. With 40 haste you get from 2 items, Nilah essentially has her ult for most of the fights you will be taking in the early to mid game, which is very important because her ultimate can be a game changer. After Death Stance, just build full damage and you will most likely get a Last Whisper third item in most of your games, but in the case that the enemy are 5 squishy champions, just buy an Infinity Edge. If you want to be extra defensive, you can buy a Shield Bull instead after your Last Whisper item since it's going to make you even tankier, but most of the time I opt for a more offensive item choice. For Death Stance games where you are the only person doing well and you have to survive fights or you lose the game, you can always buy a Bloodthirster 4th item and just sit on the 50% crit. In this case, the Bloodthirster will keep you alive and doing damage, and you can always boost your crit chance by buying a 600 gold cloak, so don't worry about crit too much. Even with only 50% crit, you will still have enough damage to do DPS in teamfights. Infinity Edge has gone down in priority this patch for Nilah because of the 10% damage nerf that Riot gave it, and with the Last Whisper item we should always have enough damage, so don't worry too much about Infinity Edge. Try to buy it after 3 items if possible. And lastly, to close out the build, choose between Phantom Dancer or Avoid to buy as your last item. I generally choose Phantom Dancer because it just gives more raw stats in terms of attack speed and move speed, but if you think every fight is going to be a long fight in your games, you can buy Avoid to have more spell rotations. That's all I have for today, and if you end up having success with the build, make sure to leave a comment below. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you in the next video.